As good of news as possible, Tyrese Haliburton's injury will not be super long-term, perhaps weeks, not months. What does that mean for the Pacers on the court and off the court and with transactions? Dave Searle and I are going to break it all down today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today, lots to get to. More on the Tyrese Haliburton injury front. Announced today, reported today, that he will be re-evaluated in 2 weeks after the Pacers' West Coast road trip with a grade 1, the lowest possible grade, hamstring strain. As good of possible news for a hamstring injury that the Pacers could have hoped for. Perhaps he could be back into January, maybe early February. Who knows? Those are just estimates and guesstimates at that. But given the timeline of this injury and what the releases say, that is perhaps a possibility. We will see where this goes. We will talk about what this all means for the Pacers with Dave Searle. Today, the timeline, what it changes for the Pacers, what they need to do on the court, and what comes next. We'll get to it all today on Locked On Pacers. Let's just get right to it. Well, that could have been worse, but it's not. Tyrese Haliburton, grade 1, the lowest grade hamstring strain. He will be re-evaluated. Please, everyone, heed this word. Not out for 2 weeks, re-evaluated in 2 weeks. That's good. That's the word weeks, not the word months. That's fantastic for the Pacers to me. How does this affect the rest of their season? What should they do for those 2 weeks? What should you expect going forward? Who better to cut through that with than the voice of reason, someone else who has seen the angst of previous Pacers star injuries go much worse than this, the podfather of Pacerland himself. It's Dave Searle. Dave, what were your reactions today to all this?
Well, it's when it first kind of happened, I got lucky in that I didn't see it live. I missed the first quarter, maybe first half of a lot of games because I'm like putting my kids down when that happens, and I kind of catch up and all that sort of stuff.
Sounds like you're killing your kids. When you're putting your kids down.
Oh, that's definitely a split between parents and non-parents. I think I've never thought of it that way, but sure. I put my kid to sleep. I grab a pillow and I put him to sleep. And so, I had just kind of seen, because I have like the newsmakers on alert, and so I'll try to avoid what's happening, but then it pops up and says Tyrese Haliburton, and I'm like, oh no. But when I saw the video, I'll be honest, I didn't really say anything. People were freaking out. I got a lot of messages, a lot of doom and gloom, a lot of Pacers are the most state-beaten franchise. They're listing off all the injuries. Everybody's losing their minds. Like, I knew it was too good to be true. Like, he was leading the All-Star vote. As soon as I saw that, I knew it was over. And all this, when I saw the actual video of it, I was like, oh, that's a hammy. Like, I get Charlie horses a lot from cycling, and like, I'm like, I know that grab. I know that grab. And it's like, it didn't look that bad to me when it happened. Like, I know that he got carried off the court, and I'm sure that the drama of like seeing him fall, grabbing it, getting lifted, towels over the head. I know that, but just like the video of the actual injury didn't seem that crazy to me. And so I was obviously worried, just like anybody else, of what they would actually say. But I'm really not that surprised that it's just a grade 1. I mean, that was what I thought was going to happen, not as an optimist, but as it sure didn't look like. And especially when they said that he was walking around with it. So really, that reaction when I popped up, it was really more of like, yeah, that sounds about right. I would have been surprised if it had been worse than that, to be honest with you.
So here was my instant watch the replay thoughts. He bent both of his knees right away, right? Okay, there we go. The bad ones are checked off. That's good. We're past that. Right. I couldn't tell if he was reaching for his groin or he tried to reach for his hamstring and it hurt too bad, right? So he just stopped short. But then he kind of tried to get up. He was on his feet. And that's, so that maybe should have been the sign right then that it wasn't detached from the bone or whatever it can be when it's really bad.
Right.
So I just didn't know, but I probably, like you, should have been, in that camp. But I wasn't sure if it'd be grade 1 or 2. I don't know how that is.
I probably would have reacted differently if I'd seen it live, I think.
Well, he also slipped earlier in the game, right? It was just a lot of weird stuff.
There's been a lot of slipping happening on Pacer courts.
Yes.
And I believe it's unpaid labor that is responsible for getting sweat off of the floor of games. So I don't want to be too harsh about anybody, but I think that there needs to be a little bit more. They need to kind of have a seminar or something on cleaning up the court a little bit better. Again, it's my understanding that's a teenager that's doing this. Am I wrong? That's sweeping it up, and so it's you can't be too critical about the job, I think, but it sounds like a little bit of retraining might be in order.
Maybe so. He was the only player who slipped, so some questions about the shoes, maybe too.
Yeah, but he slipped. The shoes. Yeah,
high tops. I'm not here to be the guy who talks about why it happened.
Is it the shoes? Oh, that's a classic Spike Lee commercial for anybody who's not half my age.
So, as we go 5 minutes somehow reacting, good news. The best news for the Pacers, given what could have reasonably been expected of this. If it is just 2 weeks, which I would consider pretty unlikely, that would be 7 games. They have a game against the Wizards tonight and then a 6-game road trip with most on the West Coast plus 1 in Atlanta. They come back with 2 tough opponents, Denver, Philly, and then Phoenix, who should be tough but kind of is weird, and then Memphis, who might stink now. And then they have their national TV game on TNT that Haliburton's been really looking forward to. I'd imagine, if possible, he would like to play in that game. I think he would like to play in every game, but especially the one that he was specifically excited about heading into this season. So if he can, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, so the TNT thing, real quick, do you think that that's still as important to him? Did he imagine that he would be in the finals of the in-season tournament, starting a leading vote getter for the Eastern Conference All-Star game? It's gotta be I'm sure he didn't. He's confident in himself. I don't think he expected that. Nobody expected that. So that finally the Pacers are going to get on TNT and have some. It's got to be the shine's got to be a little bit off that. I mean, I'm not saying that he is. It's just whatever about it, but I don't think it's as I got to get back and get some slice of national media coverage. He's been dominating national media coverage. So
that is true. I will say this. Yes, you're probably right that it's not as gripping as it was in August when they were with Team USA and he thought it was his only game. But instead, it's his last national TV game of the regular season. In Boston, he loves playing on the road in that building. I just think there's a lot of reasons he would like to play in that game. How about that?
Yes.
Even if
that isn't I would certainly say that if the stars align and it's maybe you could be slightly cautious, but you could do it. I think he would, but I also feel maybe just not quite as pressing as before. And it's, it might be the last national TV game of the season, but he's got probably a starting guard spot at home for the All-Star game. So, if that doesn't happen, he's got something else that he can do that's going to give him a really big spotlight too. So I'm sure that he would like to do it, but I don't know the inside information on Oladipo and his knee and whether he came back too quickly. Knee injuries, I feel are maybe a little bit more serious than a hamstring strain. Unless I'm mistaken, I feel maybe you can kind of restrain it and kind of knock the timeline back a little bit. I don't know how much of a risk there is for a tear or a really serious injury. Of course, we know about athletes performing at a really high level and how one thing hurts and you compensate somewhere else, so you can get a more serious injury. I would prefer that they wait until he feels fantastic before coming back. If that means 3 weeks instead of 2, I think that seems wise. And, I know that there's the argument that right now down to the 8 seed, it's tight, very, very tight. And, 1 minute you could be having contending for home court advantage, and the other one you could be in the playing game. And so that's a washing machine that's going to cycle a couple of teams out, and you don't want to be on the out, especially because you're going to face a tough Eastern Conference battle throughout the playoffs. And so I get that argument, but I just think that he's 23. The team's still very young. I'd love to have an awesome season. It's still got to be a little bit more towards the future focus. If you can just wait one more week, have a couple more games that are a little bit harder to win, and just make absolutely sure that he's going to be awesome for the rest of the season and the rest of his career. To me, if I had any control over that choice, I was just like, just wait until you're just 100% sure that you're good and fine, and then you can come back and play. But that's how I would, prefer that they handle it. The schedule obviously is very tough. This January Western Conference stretch has broken many a promising Pacer team before, and so that's just really bad timing to have him out. But he's out, So they've had some success on that in the past. But you can also say that might have been a stretch where they might have struggled anyway. And hopefully when he comes back, obviously they pick up the winning ways, and hopefully they can play a little bit better in his absence. I mean, we've seen a game against Boston where they were awful. And then we saw a game against the Miami Heat where they put up a ton of points without him. They finished off that game with Boston and won the game without him in the second half. The high-scoring quarter in that game was with him out. They have the high-scoring bench in the NBA. I think that there is a lot more hope that the team in its current form can perform better with Haliburton out. And so I sincerely hope that, the context of the upcoming schedule being tough, it's going to be tough anyway. It would have been tough with Haliburton. So there's going to be losses. It's going to be rocky, and it might be under 500 ball. But I don't necessarily think that that's worthy of a panic and bringing Haliburton back, too quickly. And, as long as people keep balance the fact that it would have been a tough stretch no matter what, if they are able to, pull out a few wins and, keep, 400 ball, 500 ball, kind of be half decent through that stretch. If they can delay his return a couple more games and make sure that thing's completely healed and ready to go, that's what I would like to see.
Hey guys, quick little break here to talk to you about the lovely people over at FanDuel. The NFL regular season is done, wildcard weekend approaching, and there's still a lot of time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed, when you place a $5 bet. That's a lot of bones. Win or lose that $5 bet, you get $150 in bonus bets. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. And that is how you can make that happen. $5 bet to win $150. The app is super easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays on FanDuel. And you can even find bets in their new Explore tab, and plenty more over on FanDuel. Again, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet a layup on FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Do you have a towel by chance? I'm drenched after the wet blanket nonsense that you just threw at me, Dave. Drenched. Okay. Yes. Those are all valid points. I think that I would certainly err on the side of caution, for biggest reason being he's under contract for 6 years. Caution. Take your time, yes. Fully healthy. This is the first year of the likely playing a game after the regular season era of Tyrese Haliburton. Yes. That said, his return last year, granted, last year they had this gap. They played in Memphis, then they had 4 days off before coming home, and he returned after that 4-day gap. But he returned against the Lakers for a marquee game, and it was a back-to-back with the Kings the very next night. Certainly a game that he also, I presume, would have liked to play. He's going to miss their game in Sacramento with his current injury. But after that Boston game on TNT, it's at the Garden versus the Kings at home. And then they have a little bit of an easier stretch around the trade deadline. So if he's thinking about when he would like to return, if he is fully healthy, I think that little stretch seems like when it could happen. But until he's 100%, yeah, they should not bring him back, regardless of how long it has been since the injury. I mean, that they have young talent worth developing. That even if they fall to 500, they'll be an 8th, right? Like I know it's really tight 4 to 8, but the gap between 8 and 9 is huge. Right. So you can hang on, I think, in this stretch without him. So that is where I want to go next. How does this change the Pacers on the court in the next few weeks? Obviously, they'll be worse. I said what you just said yesterday. I think they'll be below 500 without him. I don't think they'll be as bad as last year. I mean, obviously, all their young players are better. They have Bruce Brown and Obi Toppin now. And you could argue Buddy Hield, but outside of him, nobody's worse. Nobody's a worse player than last year, right? So there's no reason they should be worse than last year when he was out. So that alone makes me think their quality of play could be better. Their schedule is very hard, though, like you said. It's weird to say this. Like, their Wizards game tonight is actually pretty important. Get that win. Bank them while you can. The Portland game is going to be important, although it's a back-to-back on the road. It's never easy. So I think they need to, and this is what my guess is. I'll ask you in a second. I think they're going to start Andrew Nembhard, or should actually. I think they're going to use the wrong phrasing. I think they should, because that makes their starting 5 as defensively potent as possible. If you can't have your identity guy, try to find a new identity. And if it doesn't work, you can change things up. But that's how I would start things. And then their bench unit has a good combo of rim attackers and shooters. And if that doesn't work, you can make changes. But to me, that makes the most sense. And then go from there. And his absence isn't long enough that you need to think about adding another point guard or changing your style dramatically, right? Like, they should be able to stay afloat with what they've been doing. But if they're going to lean into not having the guy who, I think they play 2 or 3 possessions faster pace-wise with him per game, I would then be leaning into starting Nembhard. That's what they did in the second half on Monday. What say you? What changes would you make?
Yeah, I mean, totally agree. I mean, especially the logic of, having the more kind of defensive-minded starting 5. I think we've seen Nembhard have moments where he was asked to carry the offense and had done so in spots.
Yep.
He's not obviously going to come in and just replicate Haliburton's numbers, but he's good. I mean, he's a good point guard. It's a tremendous luxury to be able to have a guy like him who is kind of a spare, almost in a way. Like, you could kind of take him off of the roster, and they have a little bit with injuries, and be pretty good without him. But to have a guy of his quality to be able to plug and play is great. And I do believe in that. When you have a guy of that quality, leaving the bench unit as it is and then plugging that person into the starting lineup, I'm a believer of that philosophy. Keep as much continuity as you can. And of course, you're going to have everybody else maybe pick it up a little bit. I think everybody's going to be looking towards Mathurin a little bit more. Yep. We've seen great play out of him. This is a pretty big opportunity for him to say, we've seen a lot more maturity out of this game, things that he's needed to improve on. We've seen him take steps towards that. And it's like, ready or not, you got 2-3 weeks where they really need a lift. If you want to show real sparks again of being not just a guy that could be a very strong starter or just a very strong part of a rotation, but someone that can be closer to that kind of star level player, this is the time. Right. Whether you're ready or not, the opportunity has arrived. And so he's going to hopefully get some opportunity to show that. I'm sure Rick Carlisle is going to be looking for anybody who can show a little bit more of a spark than just kind of fulfilling, that 15 points a game that half the Pacers roster contributes every single night, who's going to be able to step up and really make an impact. I was really impressed in the in-season tournament when things really got tough and it got really hard to score, and defenses got ramped up. He looked like the guy that could be that little bit of extra oomph in a playoff game. I don't know how many really rough and tumble defenses they're going to see in the January stretch of a regular season. But this is the time to kind of, show that if you have to cover the offense for stretches, you need somebody who can take contact inside and finish and make the tough bucket. So he's got an opportunity here to kind of re-spark a flame in a real way of the kind of caliber that he had in the beginning of his rookie season when he got off to such a hot start. So, really hoping he has that opportunity to take advantage of that. And, with this Pacers team has been pretty deep. One thing that is kind of a nice consequence is that there's been so many guys that have shared a responsibility of filling in, one of the most effective offenses we've seen so far, where it's not like someone who has been taking like a couple of shots a game is now like, okay, now you got to score, 15, 20 points a game. Everybody's been scoring a pretty healthy offensive load. I mean, it's really just like give everybody one more shot kind of it could kind of bridge the gap fairly well. I mean, there's a difference between just straight up offensive production and, creating shots. It's kind of a, ball heavy offense with a lot of passing from people who are touching the ball. So it's not quite a matter of, throw somebody an extra post up a game to be able to fill that scoring gap. But, they've got a lot of capable ball handlers and, it seems like they have an offensive structure in place that could plausibly fill up those couple extra points a little bit better than maybe a team that had 3 superstars and is missing one of them.
Right. Okay, I have a lot of things to react to there. I hope I don't miss any. Okay, thing one. I said the same thing about, I agree with a lot of stuff you just said, first of all. I said the thing about I would just start Nembhard yesterday. The reason I'm reiterating that is, had it been a longer or much longer absence, I would have been more receptive to them, like, really young starting 5. Like, Drew and Ben and Jase went, I wouldn't start Jase. But, like, you think about that more if he's going to be out for 8-10 weeks, whatever, than a 2-week midseason absence. Well, he'll be back maybe before the All-Star break. So it's worth clarifying that difference, even though I said the same things yesterday. Thing two, obviously, throwing Andrew Nembhard in does something for you, but you nailed the key point of this is that they have to spread out those 17 shots elsewhere. And a key interesting part of their season to me has always been, when Haliburton plays well or has a good game, usually if they just get one other guy to play pretty well, they win or they have a good chance, right? The interesting thing about their season is it's never the same guy, or rarely. It's Miles Turner a lot. It's Mathurin sometimes, it's Nesmith sometimes, but it's never reliably one guy. Sometimes that's a curse. It has been a blessing. So I think that without him, I'll be curious where that falls on the spectrum, because without a creator like Haliburton to make everyone capable of scoring 20 to 25 in a game, can they reach that level? The evidence we have in Miami, they played without Tyrese Haliburton. Bruce Brown had 30 points. Last night or 2 nights ago for you listening, Mathurin was awesome. TJ McConnell was fantastic, right? We have seen games where it goes well. We also saw them. I mean, what on earth do you even call that first game in Boston this season? That was just
right.
Oh my God. And I can't remember off the top of my head what the other game he missed now was. Minnesota. Minnesota. They scored 109 and couldn't really get off the ground. So I'll be curious how that all falls into place. And if guys can raise, now that game was the last game of a road trip and a back-to-back, like everything was working against them that night, but they still sucked. So I'll be curious how all of that being spread out allows things to go. Can Miles Turner still have games where he looks extremely threatening without a dynamic pick and roll guy? And Nembhard's pretty good at those. Can Mathurin, I think he's the most likely guy to maintain his level, still keep scoring it the way he does. Can Nesmith, his shots aren't going to be as open. Can he still be the shot fake drive threat who can hit threes some nights? Can Jalen Smith keep hitting his threes? All these questions matter. And I think these guys can do it. It's just going to be harder. And so that's going to be an important part of this too. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Around New Year's, we all get obsessed with how we can change ourselves instead of just expanding on what we're already doing right. Maybe you finally organize one part of your space and you want to tackle another. I did that today. Maybe you're taking supplements every morning. You now want to actually eat breakfast too. Therapy can help you find your strengths so you can ditch extreme resolutions and make changes that really stick and impact your life. Therapy can be very helpful for anyone. Lots of benefits, including learning positive coping skills, setting boundaries that are important. Basically, it empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for people who have experienced major trauma. So if you are thinking starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It is entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire. You'll get matched with a licensed therapist. You can switch at any time for no additional charge. Celebrate the progress you have already made on BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA.
Yeah, in important context for like that conversation is that it's not an argument that for the next 2 weeks against this very tough schedule, a lot of it on the road against some very good teams, it's not like night in, night out, they're going to hit those marks. It's just Can they do that a third of the time?
Right.
Can they do it 40% of the time? That's the measure that you're kind of be able to try to reach. There's no way they're going to be able to do this night in, night out. They're going to have some stinkers. They're going to get their butts kicked a couple times for sure.
If they lose by 30 in Denver, everyone's going to go, okay.
Well,
I get it.
In my experience, you could lose to the why can't I think of the name, the Space Jam team, and then they'd still be like, Carlisle, I know that you're the architect of the greatest offense ever with not that talented a roster, but you know what? You suck. You're out. You're fired, man.
I will not respond to that. I have made fun of that line of thinking too often.
Yes, for sure.
But so I think we're on the same page rotationally. If it's not working, I think McConnell starting is a fine thought because he can get into the paint better than anyone else in terms of being a distributor and playing their offense from there. Perhaps that allows everyone else to reach their level, but there is a limit. I mean, he's a scrappy defender. And he's a good 6-foot-tall defender. He's also a 6-foot-tall defender. There are limits to all this stuff. There's a reason Nemhard's a better defender than him. We'll see what kind of adjustments they even need to make. Thing 2, people asked a lot. Okay, also, what has the NBA done that Tyrese Haliburton goes down, he hurts his groin, they carry him to the locker room, and I get 3 tweets immediately like, well, don't need to trade for Siakam anymore. It's like, that's your first thought? That whatever. But anyway, it is a thing because the trade deadline's in a month. My take yesterday was if it's a short absence, I think you just react to what happens in that absence. Like if they play well and they have about the same record and about the same spot in the East, they could continue to basically proceed as they were thinking from a trade thought. If they stumble a bit and they're 8th, maybe they're a little less aggressive and less willing to be aggressive. If they really suck and they're under 500, maybe they're not going to do anything. I think if he was out for a long time, you'd have to make these decisions now or consider them differently because it's short and he might even be back before the deadline. I think you just see what happens and then go from there. So it's hard to say if anything should change. It's kind of based on how they play and what the results are.
Yeah. Honestly, to me, I don't really change anything. I feel like maybe there's an opportunity to say, okay, maybe if you Brown is kind of an expiring deal and you maybe just swap him out for something that's a better fit that's also expiring or like something like that for some crazy reason. Maybe you don't do something like that, but any move that they really, I think, would be making mostly would be major piece. Like I can't see them making a trade.
Or just major long-term fit.
Major long-term fit. And there's no reason not to do that anymore. So, maybe if the news came back that like, it's like, oh yeah, not only is it a grade 2, but like, Achilles is snap too. And like, there's like all this horrible stuff. And it's just like, oh, okay. Now we just kind of like completely changed the course of this franchise. Now you take a pause. Now you think a little bit more about the trade deadline, but the principles are still there. Like maybe it takes them a month to get right. And maybe that makes it so that they're kind of fighting for the play-in game. It doesn't matter. Everyone's timelines are still the same. He's still going to be the same dude when he gets fully healthy. I'm still of the mentality that like, what actually happens in the playoffs this season, you want to see good things happen. You want to see them progress. I don't mean they don't matter in a basketball sense. I'm just talking about in the context of building for the future and making roster moves. It doesn't really matter. You're trying to build something that's going to last for, the next 7-10 years of, Tyrese Haliburton's prime. And if you can find pieces that are going to be major significant pieces for 2, 3, 4, 5 years of that, you make that move anyway. I mean, I don't care where they're on the standings. I don't care if they lose every single game and they're now 1 game out of the play-in game somehow. You make the exact same move that you would have made before because you should be trading for people that are going to have a chance to be long-term pieces.
Can I disagree with you?
Go ahead. I mean, the only thing I would say is that if you really, really tanked really hard, very fast, and he was out longer than possible, then maybe you get a little bit more gun shy about trading next year's pick. That would be the one thing. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So if it's a major move, whether that is a very good player or a 20 to 24-year-old wing who's a slam dunk fit, yeah, you're going to do that either way. You would do that no matter what. Like, there's a reason you're thinking about that. The pushback I would give you there is even if, like, I don't want to make up a trade that makes me sound like an idiot, but like, okay, like the Hawks, they suck, right? They're going to probably be sellers. Let's say the Pacers are 5th on February 6th, right? There's an argument to be made that like some some trade to get Sadiq Bey, like helps them, right? Like a small buy upgrade on the wing. If you go through the stretch without Haliburton and you're an 8th or 9th instead, that makes way less sense to me, right? And you're trying to, like, from a playoff perspective, being in it and getting to see what the strengths and weaknesses of this team are on that stage is very valuable. Mm-hmm. And so adding a player to get there makes some sense. But if it's less likely to happen, I don't know that I would be as interested in it as the Pacers. That's why I think the results matter. The big trades, nailing the long-term important stuff, yeah, I don't think that this changes anything. But that kind of thing that I just described, I think that is where this kind of waffles and teeters now, or even the extreme end, right? 3 expiring contracts, for sure expiring contracts. Bruce Brown could be, Jalen Smith could be, but for sure expiring. Buddy Hield, Obi Toppin, Jordan Nwora. Like, if it goes disastrously, are they all of a sudden like, well, we got to sell these guys, oh no. And I don't think that will happen, or is even plausible with his absence length. But those kind of things I think are teetering based on the results. But the big picture, what they need to do for the life of Haliburton's contract plus whatever, I think that is still the same. And I don't think that would have changed even if he was out for 6, 8, 10 months, basically.
Yeah, I'd say I'd agree. It's to me, in general, they have enough young players that are talented at just about every position that internal growth is just as good of a bet as a short-term asset to get like a veteran, just let them grow. I mean, like, what's the point of getting a guy that is a little bit better than someone that just hasn't quite stepped up yet? Just let them step up. And if it happens, great. And then you keep them long-term. And if not, then, you worry about the next season. It's just through the lens of they should be thinking about trade deadline should be about adding major pieces. I don't know what their pulse is about their ability to attract. It seems like there's some decent fits that might be free agents this year, and of course they have a ton of cap space.
Maybe
famously,
maybe.
I mean, they could. Sure. I mean, like, obviously, if the right person comes along, then they make the space, right?
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah. Right. And so, I don't know. That's a really interesting question about. You say, I mean, if I was young and rich, I wouldn't want to live in Indiana. No offense, I live here now, so obviously, But it's if I had.
Are you saying you're not young and rich?
I am not. I'm neither young nor rich. It's what I am. Like 2 months older than LeBron to kind of put the age into perspective. So every time it's like, oh, he's so old. I'm like, yeah, I guess.
Should I be saying things like, I can't take Dave for granted? Every time you do anything.
Yeah. But man, you derailed my train of thought.
You can't rub your eyes.
I need some Ginkgo Rocky Balboa.
You're talking about young rich people coming to Indiana, and I'm assuming the point you're going to make is, can Tyrese Haliburton actually recruit these guys? Is that actually a difference that matters for their cap space?
Yeah, and recruits like a word.
Yeah, let me air quotes that.
Well, okay, I mean, like, obviously he's gonna make a call, and like he seems charismatic, and it seems like people like him. But whether or not he like actively is convincing and getting someone to come over, his play is convincing. Getting that far in the in-season tournament is convincing. Having these record-setting stretches. There's all these like assists and turnover streaks, and he's just like knocking them off. Yeah. And like leaderboards are just starting to be nothing but Haliburton. It looks like the Pacers are having a lot of fun. Obviously, the offense has been tremendous with, I still would say, not that much offensive talent. It still is kind of wild that they are this successful with the rosters that they have. So, how does that make someone think, how am I going to come in? If I haven't been known as the full offensive player that I think that I can be, this is probably the place. I mean, if I can't be the best version of myself offensively on this team, I'm just not that person, Yep. Clearly there's an opportunity for anyone to score a pretty decent amount of points. And if you really do have a very strong, very versatile offensive game, this is the place to go, to have the most points. So whether or not he can literally be charismatic and get people to come over through personality is one thing, but it's just the opportunity. I was not surprised at all when Kevin Durant chose to go to the Warriors, just because it was like, it looks fun as hell to play for the Warriors. If you're a guard that can do everything and you like to share the ball and you like to play good basketball, that's the place to go. I mean, like, you watch them play and it's like, it looks fun as hell to be on that team, And so I kind of suspect that probably people are watching the Pacers play. How many times have we seen, like Kevin Garnett pretty early jumping on the train saying, like, you got to watch the Pacers. Like, they're crazy. Like, it's so much, he's been singing their praises so much. And it's just basketball players watch them and have an amazing time. And so it makes me think, it'd be hard to argue that Haliburton wouldn't be capable of being a major piece on a championship team. And not only are they doing that, but also in, like, it seems like the funnest way possible. And he also seems like a nice guy, like right. It doesn't seem like some sort of arrogant, hard to get along with person. This is the first time probably in my entire life that if I had a hypothetical thought of if I was a player that was really, really good and I was looking for a destination, I think the Pacers are genuinely on the list of, like, good destinations because of that. I mean, like, you're just going to have to get past the small Midwestern city thing a little bit. But, when everything else is there, I mean, I think that they kind of have a legitimate argument to actually get free agents for the first time ever.
Yeah. This is not related to his injury, to be clear. Now we're just riffing about Tyrese Haliburton being cool and good.
Well, but going back to the trade deadline.
Yes.
Should they cash in Brown and Buddy Hield for decent starters that are on long-term contracts because they're afraid? That's the classic Pacers move.
Yeah, no, you don't.
Find a guy that's making $20 million a year. He could be a starter. Cash him in. He's locked in for the next 4 years. They punt it down the road. They don't have to worry about getting a free agent. They're not quite as good, but they'll get the job done. That's what I'm thinking. Like, do they make that kind of move at the trade deadline, or do they kind of wait and kind of roll the dice in free agency? And if Tyrese Haliburton's injury is significant enough that there is some doubt about the future, then you might have a double whammy where if you try to make that bet and he doesn't look right when he comes back, now you maybe can't attract as many free agents and that ends up worse off.
Yeah, my reaction to the free agency part of this, just because it's interesting. The sales pitch is threefold. One, look how fun this is, right? That's the first part. Cool. This is fun. Our building is loud and fun. We have scoring lots of points. You too could score lots of points. Okay, the actual meaty part of the sales pitch is a billboard with, like, the following players' faces are on the billboard. Aaron Nesmith's face is on the billboard. Obi Toppin's face is on the billboard. Jalen Smith's face is on the billboard. Jordan Nwara's face is on the billboard. If you get where I'm going with this, it's these guys' old teams did not value them at all. And they came here and were like, oh, this guy's good. We could, even if you're already, imagine what we could do for you if you're already good. Imagine that elevation that this system and this team can do.
And they can make that pitch beyond Haliburton. Sabonis, Oladipo,
that's true.
TJ Warren. How many guys have they
Haliburton?
Well, no. Haliburton was good. No, I don't think.
Yeah, but not this. But you're right. It's different.
Yeah.
So the third part of the pitch is less that and more about winning. And for some comps, David West to the Pacers is one of them. They were already very good for that. But the one that keeps sticking with me, and no, his career didn't end cool, so no one's going to think of this as a big deal. But Dave, do you remember how big of a deal it was when the young ascending Denver Nuggets were able to convince Paul Millsap to leave the Atlanta Hawks for them?
Yeah.
And he was great at that time. He did his career did not end very good. He was an all-star with Atlanta and then went to Denver and was really solid for them. And that was in 2017-18, right before they figured out that they knew Jokic was good, but not like holy bleep. Right. But they were alluring enough and good enough that Paul Millsap, an all-star the year before, was like, yeah, I'll do that. And Denver's cool and fun, but being good is part of the pitch. And so I think that is the pitch. And you don't, that is appealing enough that doing what you described, I already kind of thought was dumb for this team, just given where they were in terms of thinking long-term, but is especially so the case now that they are playing well and have Recruiter Man on their team.
So I guess it's like, hardworking power forwards that are not interested in glamour and interested in winning.
Yeah, that's
Go to these markets in these
two of the same player.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Who's the modern Paul Millsap, David West? Who is it? There's got to be somebody. Thad Young's too old to be that guy now, and he's not good enough.
No, I don't think Siakam doesn't fit. Right? I don't think that you think he's too much to kind of maybe fit in that particular mold. I don't know. I don't know who that guy would be.
It's somebody. It's always somebody. Okay. Do you feel like we've covered every angle of this? It being shorter, I think, is the key takeaway. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're the Pacers in particular, you circle the Portland game and you circle the Washington game and say, if we win those and get to 23, we're allowed to lose 8 times in the other 8 outside of that and be 500 by the time he comes back, right? And of course, you'd like to do better than that, but those are only easy games in their next 10. I guess Memphis without Morant is game 11. So I think it's possible to be over 500, and I think that should be their goal. But their secondary goal, I guess, besides having him be 100% before he comes back. Did we miss anything with this topic?
No, I just, it's a nice sigh of relief. I feel like, not to belittle a little bit of the sad sack Indiana sports fans at the listing off all the injuries and saying how snake bit they were and all that sort of stuff. But, it just feels like there's been a lot of potentially bad news with star players, and it's almost always been like the worst version of what it could be. Like, it seems like there hasn't been that many times where there's been a chance for something good to happen to a good player in Indiana sports uniform, and it's actually happened or it's been sustained. There's always seems to be, there's an injury or something bad might happen. Oh no, it's actually the worst version of that. It seems like it's been, 12, 13 times in a row where that's kind of been the result. So it is, kind of nice to be like, oh, okay. Sure, he kind of pulled the hamstring and maybe you didn't have to freak out that much, but like, I can understand why. And, I certainly had a big part of my brain that was thinking like, this is alpha. So it's just very nice to actually have something like that be in doubt and have it be actually good news. And, especially when the All-Star voting came out and I saw that he was a top of guard. That's the first reaction I had when I saw that was like, he's getting injured, isn't he? It's like, it just hit me right there. It's like, oh no, it's going to happen this season. I was like, I bet it'll happen for the All-Star break. He's going down. And so when I saw that alert, I was like, oh, of course that's what happened. So good news. It's good news. Hamstring strain, not too big a deal. Hopefully you drink a lot of pickle juice would be my recommendation. If you've got like hamstring issues, pickle juice helps. So hopefully, he's got some Vlasic hanging around the house that he can start chugging. And, that would be my home remedy to get him back as quickly as possible.
My, of course, thought was, the Colts have a drastically depressing loss 2 days before. And all eyes are on the Pacers Monday night with the best team in the league in town. Of course it happens in the second quarter of that game. Of course it does. And then IU has a depressing loss tonight. Can I give you 2 names that are going to make you depressed about the power forward that we just described?
I bet you can.
Okay. I have to give you a minute. Gordon Hayward?
Oh.
I knew you'd laugh.
Sure. Yes.
It says a one-time All-Star on his basketball reference page, believe it or not.
That's
and Tobias Harris. That would be the...
Oh, yeah, it is Tobias Harris, isn't it?
It is Tobias Harris. That's the first name I pulled up was Tobias Harris.
Oh, it's totally Tobias Harris. Oh. I wish you hadn't said that. Oh, man.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, he's the one. He's definitely the
I did the research project just for you. And
oh, boy. Oh, I have said so many things about Tobias Harris. I can't cheer for the Pacers uniform. I'd be too embarrassed at this point. So we'll see. But you're right. That's the answer. That's definitely the answer.
There you go. I'm here to help. This was great. Good news for the Pacers. And now we cover a Tyrese Haliburton less blue and gold for the next TBD amount of time. Rest of the month, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. We'll see. Of course, you can follow me for that stuff here on Locked On Pacers or at Tony Artis on Twitter. And Dave, where can people find you and your musings covering this team, and where you don't brag about beating me in fantasy football, even though you could gloat like a maniac for kicking my butt twice this season?
Tony, you weren't even really in the contender mix, so I don't remember beating you. So I wouldn't have mentioned that. But they can find me on Twitter at MillerTimePod.
My biggest fantasy football victory this season was actually telling Dave that I thought CeeDee Lamb could be a 400-point player, and then he was for my 7th place team.
Yeah.
Yay!
And I was, man, you're gonna. Football's it goes by fast, man. Every prime year that you flush down the toilet is
I'm hanging my 7th place plaque, and then if you ever come to my house, I'm gonna make you look at it.
I will.
Tomorrow we'll be talking Pacers Wizards, the first game of the Haliburton-less stretch. How'd they look? Did they win an important game, et cetera, et cetera? Friday, Rhett Bauer's going to join us. We're going to talk West Coast swing. What did they look like in that Wizards game? What to expect for the next few weeks. And the next Monday, we'll see. I will be in Austin, Texas for a bachelor party, so I will do my best to pre-record something fun and interesting. Thank you all for listening. Hope you're happy with the news, and we will see you soon.